Okay, we're starting our training with Shadow. This will be interesting. Choosing Shadow defied almost every part of my moral compass. He seemed like a fantastical sociopath, lacking a care for anyone but the war and himself. Still, I had to admit his personality made me curious about his abilities. He also reminds me of... Oh my goodness, what is his name now? The Ice Prince from Royal Trap. I want to say Nageki. It's not Nageki. Nageki's from Hatful Boyfriend. Oh man, his name just flew out. But you know the guy. That guy. After all, he was the one that almost sent me back home through Diana's shadow. As the memory of the void filled my thoughts, I began to try and dissect how it was done. Were Shadow's doorways here? Was Shadow just that powerful? How exactly was he able to use a person... or send? Maybe send. Was he able to send a person's shadow into a void through the world? Maybe that was the reason why I chose him as my trainer. It wasn't based off looks at all. My curiosity about his abilities were pecking at me and I needed answers. Learning some of those abilities myself was just the icing on the cake. I was guided to the library by a scout, most likely under orders, and found Shadow reading through scrolls on the table near the fireplace. Upon me entering, Shadow looked over.
Ah, there you are. Come, sit.
Shadow motioned a hand towards one of the seats almost dismissively as he continued to pore over what he was reading. I followed his directions and sat down in the chair watching him. For a full minute, he said nothing. I watched as he read each line off of the scrolls before him and occasionally switched scrolls to read what the others had written down on them. The handwriting was in hastily scribbled Latin, so there was no way for me to understand it. However, I began to feel a little agitated. Weren't we supposed to be training? These are both not great, but... Excuse me. I needed to get his attention. He was in the middle of reading something. I would have just waited. This was a little ridiculous. Was he not told that he was supposed to actually train me? Why would he expect me, though? Despite my statement, Shadow continued to ignore me and kept browsing through the scrolls on the table. Shadow. Still nothing. I was becoming even more agitated at the silence. I decided to simply stand up, hopefully to catch his attention. However, as I attempted to, I felt myself unable to push off against the chair, like I was stuck to the seat. Nice. Huh? I looked down at the chair I was in. Oh, he's already training her. That's hilarious. It was a simple chair. How was I stuck? I wiggled a bit in my seat, noting that I wasn't sitting on anything sticky, nor was anything keeping me down physically. What the hell? I attempted to stand once more, unable to move any further than a centimeter up from the seat before needing to sit back down.
Do you understand now, human?
I get you. I looked up at Shadow, seeing him continue to visually ignore me, but noticed a small smirk on his lips. He was holding me down somehow.
When you can stand, we will begin.
I like you. My eyes widened. This was a test. This was an unfair trap of a test that I fell into, and now I had to find my way out. I had to figure out how he was trapping me to the chair and stand. This was going to be an adventure and a half. I looked down and around my body on the seat, seeing my shadow beneath me. It was pretty obvious that he was using my shadow to hold me down, but the question was, how was I going to break its hold? I took a moment and let my thoughts dissect the problem. He was holding me by the shadow. He had to have been, it only made sense. If I somehow made my shadow disappear, then his hold would vanish along with it. However, how was I going to do that? My shadow was beneath me, formed by the shape of my body and the firelight. Then it hit me. The firelight. I looked at the fireplace, seeing it burn bright from the pyre within its mouth. It illuminated the room and gave every person and object a shadow. As I stared into it, my plan became set. I smirked as I gripped the armrest and planted my feet onto the floor. I pulled the chair up onto one of its legs, pushing off the ground with my foot, and completely turned the chair around, facing away from it. My entire body became covered in shadow, but I knew my plan had worked. I no longer felt a hold on me, keeping me in the chair. My shadow vanished in the new darkness around me. I quickly pushed off of the chair, finally being able to stand. It seemed so freeing to be able to stand again, having been trapped in that chair. As I felt my body standing up straight, Shadow let out an impressed,
Quicker than I anticipated.
Yeah, that, I glared. Did he honestly think that little of me? I'm not leaving. Seriously? I had to stare at Shadow like he had 5 heads. As he turned to me, he smirked at my facial expression, causing me to fight back the urge to snap at him.
I had to see how intelligent you were. I'm not going to waste time on someone who doesn't know how to use their brain.
Fair. Despite the insult, I could see that he was underhandedly complimenting me in some twisted way. I guess what I was able to pull out of his statement was that I was smart enough to fend for myself. I could tell that this was going to be both an annoying process, but at least an interesting one. Shadow shook his head and stepped away from the table and towards me. He gripped the chair I was on and turned it back around to face the fireplace before crossing his arms.
What I will be teaching you are mere basics of dark magic. You will be able to hide in plain sight, control your environment, and even defend against impossible odds. I expect you to use these abilities wisely. Understood?
I suddenly became excited. I would be able to do all of those things? The idea of it all became rather fascinating and outright too good to be true. However, I was in the demon world. Anything was possible. I nodded and mentally prepared for whatever he threw my way. I wouldn't fall for another trap. Shadow took in a breath and let out a silent sigh before closing his eyes. His body slowly became pitch black, covered by a wave of shadow despite the firelight on his body. His form slowly melted down into the ground and faded into the shadow of the table beside him. Oh, what? I became confused, but as I stood for a moment, there was only silence as a reply. Was this what he meant by using my brain? I had to copy him? How did he even do that? How was I going to even start trying? You're not going to tell me how you did that? I was once again greeted with silence, making me let out a sigh. I had to figure it out. I replayed the spell in my head from memory, trying to discern how he made himself into a shadow. Maybe I had to think about becoming a shadow. Did that even make sense? I closed my eyes and tried to imagine darkness covering me. As stupid as it sounded, it was worth a shot. However, as I did, something in my nerves seemed to make me hesitate. I could sense a feeling of cold dread try and take over my body as I thought about the darkness. Was this something I was supposed to feel? I felt suddenly scared and started to second-guess my desire to learn about dark magic.
Why are you hesitating?
I heard Shadow's voice rumble through the air, causing me to question the training. Did I want to go through with this? Yes. Yes, I do. I shook my head. I needed to be brave about this. It was a new set of skills I could use in battle. I just had to take it slow. I closed my eyes again. Took a deep breath and focused on becoming a shadow. A cold feeling ran through my body, crawling over my skin and completely enveloping me in its embrace. Soon, my entire body had become surrounded in frozen numbness. Ooh. As I opened my eyes, I gasped at the sight. Shadow was once again in front of me, but the room around us had become visually dark and misty, like I was in another world. My body felt light as I stepped towards my trainer in confusion. Shadow lifted an arm and gestured dismissively around us towards the environment.
Welcome to the Shadow Plane.
Cool. The Shadow Plane?
Indeed. Think of it as a copy of the real world. But no one lives here except shadows.
I furrowed my eyebrows, still confused, but gasped as I heard quick footsteps rushing outside of the door. I was shocked to see demons in black hoods and cloaks running back and forth along the hall. What the hell?
Those are my scouts. They use this plane to travel without being hindered by other beings. They're much quicker this way.
I looked at the ground, seeing it coated completely black in darkness. How was I able to be here if this was a new plane? I thought I was trapped in the demon world. How can I be here if I'm cursed?
This plane is part of the demon world, so the curse does not affect you coming here. We are currently shadows of the real world, untouchable and barely traceable.
I nodded, taking in what he was saying. So I was able to roam around now and not be seen. That was an interesting power. Shadow began to walk out of the room, ushering me to follow him.
Come. You will see the benefit of this world in action.
I quickly quickly followed, excited to see what we were going to do. Where would we go? What was he going to show me? Shadow and I quickly walked through the halls. I could faintly see the outlines of people who were not in the Shadow Plane, and became shocked to see Shadow simply pass through them as if they weren't there. As a couple of people passed through me, I felt instinctively strange, but physically felt nothing. It was like I was a ghost. We truly were shadows. As we arrived at the war room, Shadow stopped me and peered inside. I crouched and looked through the door as well, hiding out of instinct. Oh! Is that Catgirl? Catgirl assassin lady? Hold on. Alright. Inside were Diana and a person covered by a cloak. Diana's face painted the situation's emotions very clearly, as one of agitation towards the girl who stood before her at attention.
Shama, I understand that he didn't accept it, but where did you take it?
I was told to throw it away.
Shana-tan?
Your master told you to throw it away.
As I said, ma'am.
Diana gazed at the hooded figure, burying her stare into her soul. However, Diana could only sigh. What was Diana asking about? What did the figure throw away?
Very well. You are dismissed.
Oh, it was the lily, right? I don't need this. Get rid of it. The demon bowed and left the room, passing through me in shadow. It still felt weird that people were able to go through me, but I shook it out as Shadow cleared his throat.
Scare the succubus.
What? Yeah, what? I looked up at Shadow, surprised at his demand. However, his cold gaze pierced back into mine, letting me know that he was serious about what he has asked of me. I instantly became nervous and a little fearful. I had to scare Diana? How? The idea of appearing behind her came to mind, but Shadow seemed to know what I was thinking.
Scare her from this plane.
Now things became complicated. This was a space where I was just walking through people. How was I going to even face her in this world? Well, I can control shadows, right? So, I looked into the room, taking note of everything. The light in the room was pretty bright. Her shadow was cast against the wall, mimicking Diana's actual movements. Was I able to do anything with that? What about the light in the room? Was it possible to dim the lights like a ghost? Seemed a bit complicated, but it could be fun. I took a moment to think before deciding. Okay, I got my mouse ready. Mess with the shadow, I think. Keep it simple for us new beginners. It seemed like the most simple plan, so I decided to go through with it. I quickly rushed in and hugged the wall next to Diana's shadow. With a closer view, the shadow seemed almost as detailed as the real person. Every strand of hair had a pigment of darkness. It was kind of cool the more I stared, but I had a job to do. I focused on her head, noting the horns protruding from it. The shadow made it look like she had ears. Fairly cute. Maybe that could do something. I raised a hand and ran my fingers along the horns of her shadow, hoping to grasp it somehow. Oh, it affects the actual person. Interesting. Suddenly I shot my head to Diana as she released a moan. She bent over the table, gripping the horn I caressed via shadow with a slightly shaky hand. What the hell? Did I do that? Oh dear. That's her weakness. Diana looked around, her face as red as a tomato. Were her horns a weakness? Whoops. I grazed my fingers along her shadow over her other horn out of curiosity. I'm sorry, Diana. I'm supposed to be scaring you, not turning you on. Diana gripped her other horn and bent over further, hiding her horns in her shadow. Damn. However, I became mildly excited. I could touch her without touching her. This made no sense, but it was working. I could only guess that this was the power of shadow demons. Diana stood up straight, taking in a breath before letting out a sigh.
Dear, I know you're there.
Sorry. What the hell? How did she know? As Shadow switched to the real world, I felt my body force itself back as well, like I had run out of energy. I finally felt warmth consume my body, making me feel dizzy and lightheaded. Gah. What?
She's done quite well. She went into the Shadow Plane without much hesitation.
That's me.
I see.
I naturally hugged the wall, feeling the after effects of the transfer dance over my body like rippling waves of wind. It felt so strange. I knew I still had a lot of energy, but I wasn't able to stay in the Shadow Plane for long.
I'm surprised she managed to stay there for as long as she did. I expected her to phase out before we came here.
To do what, exactly?
Shadow stared at Diana blankly before turning toward the door and walking out.
Come. We have more work to do, human.
The irritated look on Diana's face looked semi-hilarious, but I shook my head and ran after Shadow, pumped to learn more. How did I do all of that?
Curious, are you?
Well, yeah, naturally. Well, yeah, I am your student after all. I want to know. As we walked back to the library, Shadow looked at me and gave a slight smirk.
You are quite interesting for a human.
Maybe you'll actually learn my name one of these days. I felt a bit flattered and ran my hand behind my neck, bearing a shy smile. I had to admit, I was acting like a little girl who had just learned about candy. Still, I had very good reason. I did something I never imagined I could do. It was well worth the excitement. Shadow shook his head and let out a sigh.
While it is impossible for us to touch anyone in the Shadow Plane, let alone assassinate them, it is very possible to distract them, or affect the light sources of the world.
Okay. Like how I did?
Indeed. A shadow is more than just a reaction to light. It is also a part of a person's being, able to be used to, let's just say, get a message across.
So I can't kill anyone from the Shadow Plane.
No, but you can very easily make them feel as if they aren't alone, putting them on alert and giving you a good chance to kill them while they're distracted.
I took a moment to take in what he meant. I could see how manipulating the shadows were a great benefit in battle. However, apparently I had a time limit for how long I could be in the shadows. At least it wasn't entirely OP. The remainder of the day became focused on me manipulating light and shadow in the library. While being in the Shadow Plane was fun, it was only effective if the targets of my movements were either sources of light or had distinct shadows of their own. At the end of the day, I was exhausted. Who knew that using dark magic would be so difficult? Still, I guessed that I had potential, or else I wouldn't have succeeded in passing the test Shadow threw at me. I had to be proud of that much. I slumped and fell onto the ground, exhausted. I definitely used up a lot of energy, and it was a foreign feeling to me as a human. It was like my body became heavier with each breath I took, but it wasn't entirely painful. A small huff caused me to look over at Shadow, seeing him stare at me intensely with crossed arms. What?
For a human, you have a large amount of energy. I'm surprised you're not a witch.
Well, my grandfather was. I felt a little bolstered by the statement, despite how strangely it was phrased. I guess Shadow really couldn't genuinely compliment anyone. I wondered why. I had much to learn, but was excited for the next day as my training ended and I was sent to my room. Well, that went well, I think. I fell onto my bed exhausted. My body felt completely at the mercy of the fluffy mattress beneath me. Today was rough. Luckily, before I came back to the room, I had been shown bathrooms where I could relieve myself and bathe properly. At least hygiene wouldn't be an issue. I had bathed in crystal clear water before returning to my room and flopping into bed like a bum. I heard the door open and close, followed by the soft pattern of labored footsteps walking around the bed and stopping on the other side. I knew it was Erik, but I turned my head to verify my guess. I was correct. However, I felt my face flush at the sight. Erik was shirtless and his skin was beautifully covered in water droplets. His hair was damp and his breathing was labored. He must have trained hard, if not harder than me at least, and bathed right afterward. Hi.
Good evening, love.
I could tell that he wanted to flop onto the bed and simply pass out, but something held him back. I tilted my head at him, making Erik smile.
I'm going over what happened today.
And?
Do you feel disgusted by me?
Aw, Erik. I kept my eyes on Erik, letting my mind wander a bit over him. I still loved him, and didn't feel the need to yell at him or push him away. I had to assume the spirit was still resting from Sarah's attack. Nope. Erik nodded before climbing into bed and leaning back against the bedpost. cuddle. Show him you're not disgusted. I settled close to him and placed my head on his shoulder. Erik smiled and wrapped an arm around me, holding me close.
It's been a long while since I've trained like that.
I bet. Since Malix, right? Erik nodded with a smile at me. I remembered Malix, that damnable monster. He had wanted to kill the boys and even kidnapped me as bait. Luckily, he didn't last long. During the time he was around, though, Erik had trained hard and done the best he could. I was kind of proud to see him going at it again. Ooh. I got ready for bed. There was no use in prolonging sleep. The darkness welcomed me into its embrace as Erik wrapped his arms around me protectively. Let me guess, you're all hurt from being attacked earlier. Huh? The cries of the spirit vibrated through my mind. I knew Erik would take a bit to enter my dreams, but I could only look around as the sight of the spirit whimpered echoed around me in the dark. Hello?
Go away!
Finally, the orb appeared. It wasn't bobbing up and down in the air like it usually had before. It was lying on the ground like a ball. I walked over and crouched before sitting down in front of it. The sound of its whimpers made my heart hurt. Did Sarah's attack really hurt it that badly? Even more than that, it was apparently a child. Look, I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
I do feel bad for you, but we need to, work out some kind of arrangement here. If you honestly, cannot get out of me, we gotta work out some kind of arrangement. I winced a bit at its words. I was trying to be sincere, but I had to assume the spirit was too hurt to care.
Why did you do that?
We just wanted to try and get you out of my body.
Why did you hurt me?
Every word the spirit spoke felt like a knife through my heart. I didn't mean to hurt it, but we had to try. I was certain the intention of the attack was to expel the spirit, not hurt it.
You just like him.
Like him? You mean Erik?
No. The evil man.
Oh. Who's that? Evil man? I stared as the spirit gently lifted itself off of the ground and began to slowly bob up and down in front of me.
The evil man that killed me.
You're comparing me to the demon lord? That's just rude. Speaking of. My body froze as I suddenly heard the demon lord's laughter all around me. The voice bounced through the air, sending wave upon wave of fear through my body in an endless cycle. However, the spirit didn't react. Was the spirit causing the voice? The spirit lowered itself back down onto the ground and laid still, the purple aura around it still rippling around it.
You're gonna hurt me again.
No I won't. I didn't want it to be hurt. Expelling it was one thing, causing it pain was another. If you just let go, maybe it wouldn't have hurt. There had to be some way to force it out without hurting it any more than we already did. Hey. I felt a hand suddenly place itself on my shoulder, and the demon lord's voice faded into silence. I quickly turned to see Erik, looking down at me with a concerned expression.
Are you all right?
Yeah.
The icky man is back.
Erik ignored the spirit and gently turned my body to face him.
Don't listen to whatever that spirit says. We'll expel it soon enough.
You don't care about her. You just care about babies.
Whoa! Well, that's new. I stared as, instinctively, Erik summoned his tendrils ready to attack, but his expression melted into concern. Something was holding him back, and it made me a bit worried. Was the spirit telling the truth? The spirit simply faded into the dark without continuing the conflict, leaving us alone. Erik?
Yes, my princess?
Nothing. This isn't really the time. I'm just I don't know. We've got major things going on right now, and talking about being pregnant is probably not a thing to deal with at the moment. We could talk about that later, I hope. Erik tilted his head at me, confused as to why I had changed my mind. I wanted to talk to him about what was on my mind, but I began to overthink it. Was it really worth bringing up? No, it wasn't. I simply walked over and wrapped my arms around Erik, laying my head against his chest. Erik gasped a bit in shock before hugging me in return, kissing my forehead.
My sweet princess, I promise I will protect you and make sure nothing harms you anymore.
I nodded in reply, just wanting to completely immerse myself in Erik's arms. The night passed by and morning rose. To my surprise, I woke up alone. I scanned the room for Erik, but found myself in the room by myself. Erik?
He left to go train with his brothers, sweetie.
Oh. I turned my head to the sound of Diana's voice. The door was open with Diana standing in the archway holding a tray of pancakes. My stomach growled at the sight, but something in my heart felt giddy as well as seeing Diana with food.
Here, something warm today.
Thank you. Diana passed me the plate as I began to eat. I knew that I had to work hard myself today, so I needed all of the energy I could get. Diana, however, watched me as I ate. As her gaze got the better of my nerves, I looked at her with a confused look. What?
Do you know the child that's in your body?
I do. I have a pretty good idea. I shook my head, making Diana press her lips together in an irritated line. I felt a little bad that I couldn't be of more help, but the spirit didn't have a name, at least not one I knew of. Diana shook her head and leaned against the wall, crossing her arms and legs.
Well, we'll be able to expel it soon enough. I have Shadow in charge of figuring out how to sever the ties that spirit has on your body and forcing it free.
My mind instantly froze. My memory brought up images of the crying spirit and the tears it wept as I had entered my dreams. Would this new method hurt the spirit? I mean, I guess we can ask. It is her sister, I'm pretty sure. Will it hurt the spirit? Diana stared in shock at my question.
You're concerned for the spirit's safety over your own.
Well, equally? We really heard it last time. It was crying. Diana clicked her teeth and shook her head.
That spirit is clinging to you and using its emotions to make you feel sorry for it. It wants you to love it, so you will let it stay in your body.
Was that really the case? A child who is hurt cries mostly when they are seriously hurting, but what if Diana was right? What if it was trying to manipulate me? There were too many questions in my head. I shook out my thoughts and continued to eat, finishing the pancakes. Diana pushed herself off of the wall and began to leave the room, but stopped to look back at me with a concerned face.
Does the spirit ever enter your dreams?
Always. Yes, it does. Diana stared at me for a moment, most likely trying to form her thoughts into words before speaking. When she did, I couldn't stop myself from going wide-eyed.
You know, there is a way we can stop the spirit from communicating with you until we can expel it.
I stared in shock. Why wasn't this brought up before? Diana grimaced at my expression and sighed.
The spirit is a child, and is most likely repulsed by romance and sex. Am I correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah, but what does that have to do with stopping it?
The spirit is feeding on and using your energy. The only way to stop it is to drain yourself of energy.
Yeah, I kind of wondered about that. I'm like, what if Erik just takes all my energy every day? Then the spirit has less to work with. She wasn't serious, was she? She expected me to give Erik all of my energy all of the time? What about my training? Diana turned fully to me and crossed her arms.
Essentially, after training, give your remaining energy to your fiancé. Kiss, hug, fuck, it doesn't matter. As long as your energy is completely drained. You'll sleep, and because you'll have no energy, the spirit won't be able to appear in your dreams. You'll have an empty sleep.
Makes sense. It made sense, but at the same time I felt a little out of place. Erik needed my energy to survive, yes, but to give him all of my energy? Part of me felt a little excited to do it, while the other side of me felt that it was completely wrong to give energy for that reason. I mean, it's a very, it's an extenuating circumstance what's going on with us right now, so, maybe keep that in mind. Diana shrugged, breaking my thoughts and making me give my full attention once again.
It's up to you. We should have the means to expel the spirit in a day or two.
Thank you. I was curious, however, why Diana was interested in helping me. She was already doing so much for me and the others by helping me get back to the human world. Before Diana could turn to leave, I stood up from the bed. Diana, why are you helping us with this anyway? Diana's gaze burned into mine as her expression softened. Something in her eyes showed a form of weakness, almost reflecting the eyes of an innocent child. What the...
You may not believe it, but I do actually enjoy aiding people. When I can, at least.
I could only stare at Diana in surprise. I could tell she was being genuine just from the sound of her voice, and the look in her eyes made me feel somehow like crying. For some reason, I found myself dropping my empty plate on the floor and rushing to Diana, hugging her tightly. Diana tensed within my arms and stared wide-eyed at me. I couldn't stop myself from hugging her body.
What the?
I wasn't in control of myself. What was going on? It's Ophelia. Help me.
Dear, what are you?
I didn't speak again. I wanted to, but I couldn't. Was the spirit in control again? Diana finally relaxed in my arms and wrapped her arms around my form, petting over my hair gently.
How pitiful.
With each stroke, I felt anxiety wane and clear from my body. From where they came, I would never know, but I couldn't do anything but allow it to pass. Diana seemed to be some form of comfort for the spirit. I wonder why.
However you got into this body, we will free you, child.
I felt myself nod. However, I couldn't stop myself from feeling a strong energy pull from my body. Was Diana draining my energy? Yep, you go right ahead, girl. She was taking my energy so that the spirit couldn't control me. I had to let her do it. As my body became weaker and weaker, the control on my body became more and more obtainable. Finally, my body felt light, but I found function in my nerves and limbs to function of my own coalition.
Are you yourself again?
Yes. Diana nodded before releasing me and looking down at me. To my surprise, her eyes were glowing a bright gold, probably from the energy she had taken from me. However, it had to be done for me to regain my body. Diana's eyes returned to their normal red color as she smiled.
For now, rest a bit. You'll be able to regain some energy and be able to train as if nothing had happened. As long as you're not brimming with it, the spirit shouldn't be able to take control of you again.
Noted. I nodded in reply, finding myself step back and slip back onto the bed behind me. I held my head, feeling slightly dizzy from the experience. The door opened and closed, so I assumed that Diana had left me alone. My heart felt at peace for some reason, even feeling as weak as I did. Was the spirit appeased with Diana's intervention? I couldn't see why it would have been.
She's very special. That's why.
The echo of the spirit's voice reverberated through my mind, but as I waited for it to explain, no further response came. The spirit was gone for now, and I had full control. For now, rest until training.